Welcome to Backstage Pass with your host, David Nairn.
Hi, everybody. It's David back again with another edition of Backstage Pass here at Theatre Orangeville. And thrilled today to have one of my favorite playwrights join us, and terrific actor too, I might add, Kristen Da Silva. Kristen, how are you?
I'm great, David. How are you?
You know what? I'm doing okay. Reaching out and talking to friends and co-creators and stuff. It really just fills me with joy, and it fills my day. You put a smile on my face just seeing your face.
That's lovely.
Now, how are you doing? You're first and most important. You're staying happy. You're staying healthy. Your family's well.
Yeah, we're all well. We're healthy at this point. That's all we can ask for. It's definitely been a different summer than I'm used to, but we're all well here. So
great.
I'm just going to focus on my blessings.
Well, that's what we're all doing, right? We're all trying to find joy in everything around us. My garden is exploding, so I'll be probably like dropping off like a bushel basket of zucchini or something on your doorstep in the middle of the night.
Fantastic! So, I'll send you my address.
Cool. And I'm kind of doing all the, and we built a deck, and we're kind of doing all the, I managed to secure some lumber, and we built a deck. So we're doing all the things that everybody else seems to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing the same.
Except creating what we love to do, which is create theater, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we're doing all those other things to console ourselves. It is still a creative outlet. I'm doing the same. I did an entire backyard renovation. So I'm pouring my heart and soul into gardening right now instead of theater.
Yeah, I guess we're all kind of doing that. I mean, as I say, all of us just trying to find joy until we can come back and do what we do. So audiences, of course, know your work from Sugar Road, which we premiered at Theatre Orangeville. And one of my favorite plays of all time, Where You Are, which again, you gave us the honor and the privilege and pleasure to premiere that work that you also starred in.
Right.
And we were able to take that play about. Are you working on anything now? Our audiences are going to want to know, what's next from you? What can we wait? What's the next thing coming?
Well, I'm not writing anything brand new right now, not really. I have this sort of play I go back to, which is really for my own amusement. It's such a huge cast that it's like practically unproducible, but I like working on it and it's fun. But I have a new show that I did write, and I finished the first draft right before we went into lockdown. So I'm still working on that, like fleshing that play out. So that's something audiences can keep their eyes peeled for. It's in a slightly different genre for me, so that's very exciting.
Well, of course, we're both being a little bit coy, aren't we? Because we have been working on a project together for the last, since the fall, anyways, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It was to be included in this year's playbill and will be happening at Theatre Orangeville very soon. Fingers crossed. So audiences are going to be really thrilled about that, and so let's keep them in suspense a little bit about what that one is. But it's very funny, but it's a departure for you in terms of the style. So
that's right.
Audiences are really going to enjoy that. You're being produced all over the place now. Your work is being done all across the country. That must be such a thrill to know. And you were saying the other day that your work is being translated now. Is it into?
Yeah. Well, we're in conversation with a couple of folks in Europe, and there's interest in translating some of the work, which is just like, it's so hard to wrap my head around, because like 3 or 4 years ago, I was unproduced, looking to get traction here in even just Ontario, and that's like, as anyone trying to do that knows, it's like pushing a ball up a mountain. So yeah, to contemplate it being translated into another language and being possibly produced in other countries, it's just beyond my wildest imagination of what this career could be. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, because it has been a really kind of not a whirlwind, because he was a 30-year overnight success is what they say about people. But Because you've written, how many plays have you written now?
Wow, good question. I think 7.
Right. And originally they were written for community theater groups, or is that where it started, or?
Well, I was, I started acting really, really young, and I did do a ton in university, but I decided not to go into a career in the arts like right out of school. So during the period of my life that I was working in a different industry, I was still involved in a ton of theater, whether it was like indie stuff or and just non-union work, and some of that was community theater. I think community theater is what kept me going for a lot of the years that I wasn't able to pursue this passion full time. And the first play I wrote, Book Club, was inspired by an experience I had doing a Canadian comedy in a community theater. But when I started writing, I wouldn't say that my intention was to do that, to write for that market, because I didn't actually start writing with the intention of doing anything with the work. I wrote that first play really just to prove to myself I could finish a full-length play. And once I had written it, what happened was a couple of friends of mine suggested we table read it. And the experience of hearing it out loud, I started to dream differently about seeing it on stage. And they also, they were really engaged in that particular play and wanted to see it done. So together, that was kind of the engine that got me thinking production. And I self-produced that first play. So it wasn't a community production. It was, the actors were paid. It was a profit share indie production. And the rest is just sort of developed organically. I think really starting with being able to make the connection with you, actually, in a lot of ways, because Theatre Orangeville was the one of the very first places that I was produced, and the first place where I worked on what I would say a full, getting a new script up from and being part of the development process in the rehearsal room. That was my first experience doing that at Theatre Orangeville. So that kind of set the role for everything else since then. And yeah, it's funny, things gain traction. And what I learned was that, because I always ask, how did you hear about this? If I get a request from a different province where I don't have any contacts, I'm always curious, how did this travel to you? And sometimes it's been through an actor who auditioned for it in a different city and went back to where they work saying, this is a piece you should look at, or a playwright you should look at. So it's like this pollination thing that happens. It's really neat.
All these little bees just moving from one play to the next. Well, we talk, somebody come and say, no, I've heard you're doing this play, this Sugar Road play. What? And I go, wow, it's a huge hit. Audiences loved it. Standing every night, sold out. Huge hit. And of course, now you're being produced all across the country. Every professional theater in the country, I think, is probably clamoring for your plays and your next play and your next adventure. But you also are a terrifically, wonderfully talented actor.
Oh, thank you.
Well, no, it's true. I mean, it was so wonderful to have you in that inaugural production. And that we talked a little bit about that, right? About that process. How was that process of being a playwright, of it being a brand new play and also being in the show? It's that actor hat, playwright hat. How did that process work for you?
I think an advantage that I had that maybe would be not necessarily true for every playwright is that I really did come up as an actor, director, crew, whatever. I played many roles in theater before I started writing. So I've seen a production from many points of view personally, which I think is a really good experience to have, because it helps kind of, I think what can be a barrier is that if you're too stuck on your words and we all do this, the sanctity of the word, right? You sit at your computer and I've literally spent 2 hours on one piece of dialogue, one section of dialogue, and just wordsmithing and I don't like that beat. I think it needs to be this number of syllables. You can get really stuck in it. But when you've got if you've had more breadth of experience where you've been able to play many roles in production, I think it helps get out of that sort of locked in thinking. Also, I just made a choice for myself from the very beginning that I I came to this through love of the art form and for nothing else. And I was always going to be as open as I could be to the input of other artists, because that's where the piece comes alive. Like,
Right.
I write it and it's words on paper. It's not until it's in the hands of the designers, the actor, the director, all of the people who contribute to like, it's a collaboration. That's what this, if I didn't want that, I would write novels.
Right.
So I came in with a philosophical point of view that I was always going to try to be as open as I could. And so far it hasn't been a struggle for me. Like, I've really been able to let go of anything because there's always stuff you would do differently if you were doing it, but that doesn't mean what you would do is better. It just means
Right.
it's different. So it's been great. I've had a great time with it, and it was a lovely cast. They made it very.
Yeah, it was a beautiful production. I was so glad that we were able to take it to Collingwood, and that we were able to share with other audiences, and that it's being done again and again and again and again and again. It really is such a beautiful, and it was a very personal play for you, was it not? Sort of some of the backstory on. I mean, the jumping off point of the story was from a very personal experience, and.
That's right. Yeah, it was partially based on my experience of learning my aunt was sick with a very aggressive cancer. So, and she was a young woman still, and had a lot of life to live, and got a diagnosis that was just extremely devastating. And the angle I came at the story it was both her own, just couldn't get out of my head, like what that would be like to know that you have this finite period of time left. And in her case, it was very short. She was given, I think her prognosis originally was a year. So my first sort of take on it was, what would it be like to live that year? Every experience you have would be through this filter of knowing that, there's a monologue in the piece about, everything could be my last. This could be my last time I hear this song. It could be the last time I see a full moon. It could be like all of your experiences, you would be seeing it through that lens. But also, what is the impact to your community and the people you love and the people who count on you? And so I chose the story that I did, which was about two sisters who really had these like interdependent lives. They built a life together on Manitoulin Island. And so it's about the character who's dying. It's about her sister's experience of knowing she has to redesign her life after her sister's gone, and her sister wanting to help her move on. And then, of course, the niece, which is, sort of based on my experience of all of that and how it impacted our relationships. So very personal. Having said that, it's highly fictionalized. There's, the characters are not my aunt, my mom, myself.
Oh, yeah, no, of course.
But yeah, the inspiration for it was certainly from a really personal experience that I went through.
The thing that really touched my heart, even from when I read the very first draft of it, was that you can explore those things those issues, those things that happen in our lives, from a point of view of humor and of finding maybe it's a little bit like it's a lot like what we're doing now, of in a pandemic kind of situation that can be really debilitating for some people, is that we're finding the joy, we're keeping our sense of humor of how we move forward. Is that kind of where I guess that's where you sort of came from?
Because my aunt was true. I mean, everyone sort of says that when people are so inspirational going through something like that, but truly, I was inspired by how she handled it and what she wanted the last year she got to be like. And it was, I want to continue having joy. I want to focus on the joy. I want to laugh. I want to joke. I want to get through this in my way, which is very Canadian. Like, my mom, the generation my mom was part of, huge family, not a ton of money, they made do, and they got through what was tough in life through laughter, through humor. That's how they confronted life. And, there's something very beautiful about that. Now, I think it's also, in the play that there is more exploration of the emotion than I think, like, in real life we're always capable of doing with the people we love. So in that way you get to sort of expand upon, like, and almost make an idealized version of what that could look like. And so there's resolution for people, and that we all work through our problems. And, in the real world, that's not always easy. But certainly, yeah, this spirit of like, this is happening, I'm accepting it, and I'm not going to let it ruin the last moments I have left on earth. I'm going to make this an experience of joy. It's going to be in my way. Like, she didn't have any control over how the illness went, but she had control over how she chose to confront it. And I thought that was really beautiful and inspiring.
Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely play. It's a lovely story. I know that audiences, I'm still getting, I still get comments, I can be going through not so much lately, but, I can be going through the grocery store and people will stop me in the lettuce section and say, David, that play that, it's so sensational. And people are still really commenting, as they are about the other work is Sugar Road, almost kind of 180 degrees from that play, the story of the returning country and Western singer to the love of his life in a broken down amusement park concert setting or something, because that was a lot of fun to work on too. It's so great to have, for me, because you guys, I'm in awe of writers, as some people may have gleaned. I'm a talker. I'm not a writer. I don't really have the discipline to sit down, and so I'm always a little bit mesmerized by writers and how you kind of do that and what that sort of craft is. But because it's such a collaborative art form, it's always for me, it's so essential that the playwright is out of a new work. I mean, if the play's been produced 50 times, obviously we're going to invite you and send you the check and all that kind of stuff. But the play is set, it's done, it has a history, and we've moved on. But because we do so much new work with our new play development fund and everything, it's always such a treat to have the playwright in the room as part of the process, a part of that collaborative thing, because those voices have been torturing you in your imagination for quite some time, and to actually then go, wow, this is the dream cast, and those are the voices I heard, and or maybe not, but now that I hear it, I go, isn't that an interesting kind of take? It's such a great part of the process.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I've had both of those experiences where it's like, that's exactly how I imagined this character. And then I've had the experience where I was like, that's not how I imagined this character, but that actually really works. And I like, then you can take from that and hard bake it into the script if you really get attached to the choice they made. I find that whole process really exciting. Casting is, it's tough. Like it's hard to, it's hard to communicate, director to playwright too, sometimes around what is the role, because you only have the clues in the text, but the playwright has a 3D vision in their head, which can be hard to articulate. So sometimes that's like a finding it process. I've had only good experiences with that. So I've been very blessed.
Yeah, casting is it's such a delicate, it really is a bit of an art. It's a delicate kind of a thing. I remember once, this is many years ago, it's probably 17 or 18 years ago here at Theatre Orangeville, and we were doing a new play by a playwright who shall remain nameless. A terrific playwright, don't get me wrong, but we were doing a play, and the playwright had a very firm vision of one particular character who was really kind of the linchpin of the whole play, and I had a very different one. And we went back and forth, and we talked about that, and I to my regret, I dug in and just said, it's my decision, I'm going to make it. And I was so wrong. The brilliant actor, wonderful actor, but just who I worked with since and would work with again in a heartbeat. But it was just miscasting on my part. It was a lesson for me that every time I come to casting a play, particularly a new work, of listening to what your voice is, because I say those voices have been torturing you for a lot longer than they have me. So, but yeah, that was, and almost every time I sit down to cast a new play, I go, remember that lesson, listen, right?
Well, and actors sometimes will say this isn't right for me, like, which is great. Like if you as an actor, I've been miscast, and it's really uncomfortable and it's tough, right? So like, because there is we all like to think we have this humongous range, but certainly we have a sensibility to us that can be hard to shake. So yeah, it's a tricky part of the process to get right. And like, it's so important. So the pressure of it is so immense. And I like how we work though, because it's nice to be asked, and certainly not all theaters need to, and often they will cast a show, and I have most of the time I don't have a whole ton of say or to do with the casting, but on a new production, and I think the way you work is really, you really are very aware of the playwright's vision, and you constantly bring it back to that, which I think is great. And I know I appreciate it, and I'm sure the other writers that you work with appreciate it too.
Well, I mean, I've said on many occasions, and I think I've said it to those watching, is that everything that we do at Theatre Orangeville, everything, fundraising, selling tickets, anything that we do is all really for one purpose, and that's to serve the play. Right. So all the entire, like on that first day of when we do that first read through, there's like 30, 35 people that are all sitting around, every one of whom is directly involved in the play, whether they're selling tickets, making costumes, designing the set, seating people in the theater, the front of house. Everybody needs to be involved in that, what is, because to me, it really is a collaborative art form. And thank you for trusting us enough to kind of look at that stuff. I've been asking everybody, actors that on this, what is your worst actor nightmare?
Like my actual nightmare? Like, do I dream?
Well, something weird maybe that's happened to you on stage, but also about that actual nightmare. I have one that's very specific.
Yeah,
it happens all the time, but it's a very specific one.
Okay. Mine is that I'm in a production. I am about to go on stage. I'm usually backstage. And I realize, even if it's in the dream, I'm doing a play I've done in the past, I realize I don't know any of my lines. And I don't know why that happens. Like, I don't know whether I just didn't prepare or somehow I got stuck in at the last minute. Anyway, I spend the dream trying to find a script. Sometimes I find one, but I can't find my page. And I'm going, and like someone's saying, you're on, and you got to get on. And like, I'm standing there and I'm trying to figure out what's happening and ad lib. It's a horror. I have that nightmare every time I perform. Since I'll tell you where the nightmare started. I was 20 or so, 19 maybe. How old are you when you start university? Whatever age that is. I was taking an acting class in university. I went to York University, and after class one day, my professor kind of called me aside, and I was scared of him because he like would kick people out of his class and stuff. Like, he was like really touchy. So I thought, oh shoot, what have I done? But he said, you're kind of funny, or you seem to be kind of funny. You're going to be in my improv company. Come to audition for us today at lunchtime. And it wasn't a like, do you want to? It was like, you're going to be in this. Come at lunchtime and audition. So I showed up, and anyway, he ended up putting me in the improv company. And my first show, I think, was like either that week or the next week, like almost no rehearsal time. And it was myself and another woman who were brand new. And the other part of the improv company, they had been performing together for a while, like a couple of months. So it was a sketch. It was like sketch, but some improv as well. And so the first night we were being put on stage for the first sketch. Both she and I were in this sketch, and it was one of the sketches they did regularly. They had like regular sketches. And I don't even remember what it was about, but it was called Gambino. And I knew it. I knew all the beats. We learned it. And we get out on stage and we start. And everybody else is in on this practical joke where they decided to do an entirely different scene. But they didn't.
Oh.
It was horrible. I was like,
terrible.
Right? It was
awful.
It was my first year of university. I came from a very small town. I had acting experience, never improv. Had done like, other than we had an improv club at school, but we didn't perform in front of anyone. So it was my first time ever performing live where there was an improv element, which is really scary.
Oh, it's terrifying.
And then this happened, and I would love to tell you I rolled with the punches, but I was like a deer in the headlights. And so I think what it did though was it forced me to like, it highlighted the importance of really honing my improv skills, because after that I was like, that is never going to happen to me again. I'm going to be able to like do whatever they're doing and go with it. But yeah, it was a terrible practical joke. And I'm sure that's where that nightmare originates from, that I'm like stuck out there not knowing what's going on. So to this day, I have that dream.
Well, mine, I've said to folks, mine is always the, I'm back. It's the same. It's anxiety, right? It's because we want to do well. It's just that, that all that stuff that creeps into our dreams, into our subconscious, something like that. Mine is very similar. I'm backstage. I don't know the words. It's something I've done before. I just never bothered to rehearse. The orchestra starts and I can't find my pants either, just to sort of put the icing on the cake. It's just like, oh my goodness.
That is funny.
Yeah.
I actually had that nightmare about Theatre Orangeville when I started working with you. I dreamt that you were doing a new production of a new play, which was like in my dream, a play I hadn't actually written in real life. And I got there, and I don't know if I was in it or not, but whatever happened, we were outside, and the venue was really odd, and you had to walk really far to get to the stage, and I was like lost. And yeah, you're right. It's totally anxiety, but I think they say the number one fear people have is public speaking. So it makes sense that actors all sort of share this common nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for this, Kristen. We're going to have you, we're looking forward to doing your new play as soon as we can, and to have you back in our theater and on our stage. We want, we got to get you back in front of an audience because they adore you. So thanks for this. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day. Was it a busy day?
There are no busy days anymore.
There are no busy days anymore, right? Anyway, well, thank you for this, my friend.
I miss everyone. All my best to the audience in Orangeville and all the good people involved in Theatre Orangeville, and you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining Theatre Orangeville for Backstage Pass with David Nairn. Until next time.